The officer slammed the pregnant woman against the hood of a deep blue sedan, the metallic click of handcuffs echoing in the stunned silence of the parking lot. His face was a mask of snarling aggression, a stark contrast to her determined calm, one hand instinctively shielding her belly. Shoppers froze, their disbelief palpable in the humid afternoon air as injustice unfolded in broad daylight. But neither they nor the enraged cop had any idea that a bearded man in his 60s was watching from 2 rows over, his eyes unnervingly still. Before I tell you exactly what happened in those next heart-stopping minutes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The scene was a sun-drenched parking lot at the Oak Valley Market, deceptively peaceful. The afternoon air hung thick and heavy, shimmering above the asphalt of the Oak Valley Market parking lot. The gentle rumble of shopping carts and the distant hum of traffic formed a lazy, comforting soundtrack to a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. Sunlight glinted off windshields, creating a mosaic of blinding light. This was a place for errands, for forgotten grocery lists, and figuring out what's for dinner. It was the last place you'd expect a life to pivot on a moment of pure arrogance. Maya Vance, a talented designer in her late 20s, felt a gentle flutter in her womb, a secret conversation just between her and her baby. She carefully placed a carton of organic eggs on top of her reusable bags in the cart, her movements mindful and deliberate. Her mind was on nursery colors, on creating a world of peace and softness. She was the picture of serene motherhood, her silver clasp holding her dark hair back, her face composed and thoughtful. That fragile peace was shattered by the sudden growl of an engine. A police cruiser, which had been idling like a predator in the shade, pulled forward and stopped, cutting off her path to her sedan. The driver's door swung open with aggressive force, and Officer Vince Carter emerged. He was a man built of hard angles and brute force, his jaw set like concrete, his eyes hidden behind a pair of wraparound tactical sunglasses that erased any hint of humanity. He moved as if he owned the very ground he walked on. "Ma'am," he barked, the word a weapon. "Stop right there." Maya turned, her body instinctively moving to shield the eggs, and, more importantly, the precious life within her. Her expression remained neutral, a mask of polite caution. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" Carter tapped 2 fingers on his chest-mounted camera, a gesture of performative authority. "We got a call about a shoplifter. Description matches. Woman, dark hair, silver clip, using personal bags." His tone was accusatory, his judgment already passed. Maya raised a single, questioning eyebrow. The absurdity of it was almost laughable. "These are reusable bags, officer. That's the point of them. The receipt is right here on top. I'm happy to show you." She made a slight, calm motion toward the cart. "Hands where I can see them," he snapped, completely ignoring her offer of simple, verifiable proof. His voice cracked with an impatience that felt personal. "Step away from the vehicle. Now." It was then that a cold dread, different from fear, pricked at the back of Maya's neck. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was about power. "Officer Carter," she said, her voice steady as she read the name tag on his uniform. "I am cooperating, but I'm also pregnant. There is no need for this to escalate." Her calmness seemed only to fuel his rage. For men like Carter, a lack of fear is interpreted as a challenge. 2 aisles over, a mother strapping her toddler into a car seat paused, her hands frozen on the buckle. A young store clerk pushing a long train of carts stopped, his mouth slightly agape. They were silent witnesses to a slow-motion car crash of authority. "Don't tell me how to do my job," Carter snarled, stepping into her personal space. "Turn around. Hands on the hood." Maya took a deep, centering breath, set the eggs gently on her car's rear bumper, and raised her hands in a clear sign of surrender. "I am not resisting," she said, her voice clear and firm. But he wasn't listening. His hand clamped down on her shoulder like a vice, and with a grunt, he slammed her against the hot metal of the hood. A collective gasp went through the silent audience. Her sunglasses clattered onto the paint. For a terrifying second, the world went white with pain and shock. A fierce, protective anger surged through her, but she swallowed it down. Panic would help no one. He wrenched her right arm behind her back. The first cuff bit into her wrist, cold and unforgiving. The metallic click was the loudest sound in the world, a sound of absolute, unjust subjugation. The air crackled with a tension so thick it felt like static. Officer Carter, high on his own aggression, was a man in a world of one, his reflection staring back from the polished blue hood of the car. He savored the feeling of Maya's wrist in his grip, the soft skin a testament to his hard power. The mother with the toddler had her phone out now, her hand trembling as she hit record. The cart boy watched, frozen, a sense of helpless rage churning in his stomach. Carter yanked on Maya's left arm, trying to force it behind her back. "Stop resisting," he yelled, the standard cry of an officer who has lost control and needs a justification for his actions. But Maya wasn't resisting. She was simply not assisting. She kept her elbow tucked, refusing to give him the leverage he wanted. This subtle act of defiance, this refusal to make his job easy, drove him further into his rage. Then, a new sound cut through the tense tableau. Footsteps. They weren't rushed or panicked. They were measured, deliberate, and heavy with an authority that had nothing to do with a badge. Each step on the hot asphalt seemed to draw the attention of the world. A man emerged from between a minivan and an SUV. He was in his 60s, with a salt and pepper beard and a quiet intensity in his eyes. He wore a simple dark gray Henley shirt, but he moved with the centered grace of a martial arts master. It was Steven Seagal. He didn't look at the officer first. His gaze went straight to Maya, a silent question in his eyes. "Are you okay?" A barely perceptible nod from her was all he needed. Her shoulders, which had been rigid with tension, softened just a fraction. "Help was here." "Let her go," Seagal said. His voice was quiet, almost conversational, yet it carried across the parking lot, cutting through Carter's tirade. Carter half-turned, annoyed at the interruption. He sized up the older man, saw no uniform, and dismissed him. "Move along, civilian," he sneered, gesturing with his head. "This is official police business." Seagal took another slow step forward, his eyes never leaving the officer. "You are hurting my niece," he said, his voice remaining dangerously calm. "And you are making a mistake. Release her. Now." The sheer audacity of the command made Carter bark a laugh. "Or what, old man? Who do you think you are?" The cart boy whispered, "Oh man, he has no idea," a grin of anticipation spreading across his face. Frustrated and needing to reassert his dominance, Carter decided to make an example. He shoved Maya again and reached for the baton at his hip. "You want to interfere?" He spat at Seagal. "You're obstructing." The sound of the baton and ring scraping against its holder was a declaration of war. But the war was over before it began. As the baton began to clear the leather, Seagal moved. It wasn't a strike or a grab. It was a fluid, almost gentle motion. His right hand met Carter's wrist, not to block it, but to join it. His fingers found the precise points of leverage, speaking a language of anatomy that Carter's bones couldn't ignore. There was no sound of impact, just a subtle shift in geometry. The baton, suddenly free from a grip that no longer had control, clattered onto the car's hood. Carter's mind couldn't process what had happened. It was like a magic trick. Enraged and confused, he lunged, but Seagal was no longer there. He had pivoted, a small, effortless turn that used Carter's own momentum against him, sending him stumbling off balance. Humiliated and desperate, Carter's hand instinctively went to the holster on his hip. "Don't," Seagal said, and his forearm was suddenly there, a firm, impassable barrier laid across the gun, pinning in place. It wasn't a struggle. It was a statement. The moment was frozen in time, a tableau of unchecked aggression meeting immovable calm. And then, another sound sliced through the air, a clean, professional siren. A second cruiser was pulling in, and Sergeant Isabella Ramirez was already opening her door. Sergeant Ramirez stepped out of her unit with a practiced economy of motion. Her hands were empty and visible, her expression sharp and assessing. She didn't shout. Her voice was a calm, authoritative force that instantly lowered the temperature of the crisis. "Nobody moves," "Everyone breathes," she commanded, her eyes sweeping the scene in a single, comprehensive glance. She took in everything. Maya's pregnant form pressed against the car, the single handcuff dangling from her wrist like a broken promise. The red crescent mark it had left behind, Officer Carter's flushed, furious face, and the tall, bearded man standing in a posture of perfect, unnerving stillness. And the baton, sitting on the car hood like a forgotten object. Her gaze lingered on Seagal for a moment, a flicker of professional recognition in her eyes. Not of celebrity, but of competence. She knew she was looking at someone who understood control. "Carter," she said, her tone clipped and professional. "What is happening here?" Carter launched into a blustering, self-serving narrative. She was resisting, "Sergeant, and this man, he assaulted me. He interfered." Ramirez held up a hand, silencing him. "Quiet." She walked past him and addressed Maya first, her voice softening with respect and concern. "Ma'am, are you injured?" Maya finally allowed herself a shaky breath. "I am unharmed. Just shaken." "You wouldn't look at my receipt." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. She saw the receipt sitting plainly atop the groceries in the cart. She looked at the mother who was still recording, then at the cart boy. "I need your statements. And that video, please." Within minutes, the truth was assembled, piece by irrefutable piece. The cell phone footage was damning. It showed Maya's calm cooperation, Carter's unprovoked aggression, the violent shove, and his refusal to even glance at the proof of purchase. The narrative he had constructed crumbled into dust under the weight of digital evidence. Ramirez turned back to Carter, her face a mask of cold disappointment, which was far more terrifying than rage. "Officer Carter," she said, each word landing with the weight of a hammer blow. "Your interpretation of events appears to be inaccurate. The evidence suggests a gross abuse of authority." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Place your weapon on the hood of your unit. Then give me your badge and keys. You are relieved of duty, pending a full internal investigation." The blood drained from Carter's face. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but one look at Ramirez's unyielding expression told him it was useless. With jerky, furious movements, he unbuckled his duty belt, the act of disarming himself a profound and public humiliation. He slapped his badge and keys into Ramirez's outstretched hand, shooting a look of pure venom at Seagal as another officer escorted him away. "This isn't over," he muttered, a promise hanging in the air. The paramedics arrived, their calm professionalism a balm on the chaotic scene. They checked Maya over, confirming she and the baby were fine, just stressed. The red mark on her wrist was already starting to fade. As the parking lot slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Ramirez handed her card to Maya and Seagal. "He will have a hearing," she assured them. "Thank you for your restraint, sir. This could have been much worse." On the quiet drive home, the adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by a lingering unease. The city lights blurred past the windows. "He won't let this go," Maya said softly, her hand resting on her belly. Seagal looked over at her, his expression grim. "Men like that don't see a uniform as a responsibility," he said. "They see it as a license. And when you take away their license, they don't learn. They just get angry." His words were a prophecy, a dark cloud on the horizon of a day that should have ended with a sigh of relief, but instead ended with a question mark. Evening settled over the neighborhood, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and purple. The scent of jasmine drifted from a nearby hedge, and the sound of children's laughter echoed down the quiet, tree-lined street. It was a sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the world was meant to be kept at bay. Inside their home, the traumatic events of the afternoon felt like a bad dream. Maya was sipping a calming chamomile tea, the warmth of the mug a small comfort in her hands. Seagal stood by the window, his gaze distant, watching the shadows lengthen across the manicured lawns. There was a stillness about him, but it was the stillness of a watchman, not of a man at peace. They decided a short walk would help clear their heads, to reclaim the day from the violence that had tried to stain it. They stepped out into the mellow twilight, the air cool and pleasant. They hadn't made it more than 50 yards from their front door when the peace was shattered again. A nondescript sedan, which had been parked in the shadows down the street, suddenly roared to life. It sped forward and screeched to a halt, blocking the sidewalk in front of them. The driver's door flew open, and Vince Carter stepped out. He was out of uniform, dressed in jeans and a dark hoodie, but his face was contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage that was more terrifying than any badge. His eyes, no longer hidden by sunglasses, burned with a manic light. "You!" he screamed, his voice raw and unhinged, echoing through the tranquil neighborhood. "You ruined me. You think you could just walk away?" Lights flicked on in neighboring houses. Curtains twitched. "Go home, Carter," Seagal said, his voice low and even, a stark contrast to Carter's hysteria. He subtly moved, placing himself between Carter and Maya. "There's nothing for you here but more trouble." Carter let out a wild, bitter laugh. "Trouble is all I have left," he spat, and his hand plunged inside his hoodie. The motion was terrifyingly familiar, but the object he pulled out was not a police-issued baton. It was a dull black, unregistered pistol, an instrument of pure menace. "They'll remember what I do," he snarled, raising the weapon. The world seemed to slow down, every detail becoming sharp and clear. The fear on Maya's face, the glint of a porch light on the gun's barrel, the sudden, deathly silence of the street. Before Carter's finger could even tighten on the trigger, Seagal moved. It was an explosion of disciplined energy, a single, fluid motion that was over in the blink of an eye. He closed the 10 feet between them in a heartbeat. He didn't attack the gun, he attacked the intention. His left hand deflected the weapon's aim skyward as his right hand struck the nerve cluster on Carter's elbow. A jolt of pure agony shot up Carter's arm, his fingers spasming open. The gun clattered harmlessly onto the asphalt. Simultaneously, Seagal used Carter's own forward momentum, spinning him around and slamming him face first onto the hood of his own car with a sickening thud. He placed a palm flat between Carter's shoulder blades, not as a blow, but as an anchor, pinning him completely. There was no fight. There was only a perfect, brutal, and life-saving application of control. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. This time, there would be no review, no suspension. As Sergeant Ramirez's car rounded the corner, she saw the scene. The disgraced officer, the illegal weapon on the ground, and the man who had twice chosen discipline over destruction. Justice, final and absolute, had finally arrived. What happened on that street wasn't just the end of one man's career. It was a profound lesson written in asphalt and twilight. It revealed that true strength is never found in a uniform, a weapon, or a shout of rage. It resides in the quiet space of discipline, in the choice to control a situation when you have the power to destroy it. Carter had authority, but Seagal demonstrated true power. Have you ever witnessed a blatant abuse of power in your own life? What would you have done if you were the bystander in that parking lot, phone in hand? Do you believe that in a world so often ruled by anger, the art of disciplined restraint is a more potent and meaningful force than raw aggression? We want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about justice and discipline resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where true strength is put to the test. Share this with someone who believes courage is quieter than rage. We read every single comment, and your voice matters in this community. More stories about unexpected heroes are waiting for you on the screen. Watch those next, and we'll see you tomorrow with a new story about an underestimated veteran who protected his entire neighborhood.